In today's video, I'm going to show you how much travel nurses get paid, how to find what contracts are out there, and make sure you stick around to the end because I'm going to share with you exactly what's going to happen to this amazing travel nursing market when it finally corrects itself. I'm Travel Nurse Rich, and I've been a travel nurse for years, and if you find this content helpful, then smash that like button, subscribe, and let's get into the video. So in order to explain how much money travel nurses make, you first have to start with how much money on average a travel nurse made before COVID created this massive need for travel nurses. So we're going to call this period the pre-travel nursing crisis era, which on a calendar would have started right around March of 2020. During this time, travel nurses could expect to take one of two different types of contracts, a normal contract or a crisis contract. For a normal contract, we could expect to sign a 13-week contract for 36 hours of work per week, and an average take-home pay would be right around $1,500 every week, which is great because it still adds up to being around $6,000 a month, which is actually pretty good money. And this paycheck would include your hourly wage along with your meals and housing stipend all bundled together. And if you had to find housing, it would actually come out of that wage. During this time, there were certain areas of the country that were paying way higher than other areas of the country. Areas like California, even Washington State, sometimes New York and Texas were paying much higher than your typical Midwestern states. But a high-end normal contract for travel nursing during this time was right around $2,900 a week take home, and that was on the higher end. On the other hand, you had something called crisis contracts. For these, you could expect to take home anywhere between $3,000 to $4,000 per week, but they would usually require more work than a typical contract would. For a typical crisis contract, you could expect to sign one anywhere between a 10-day commitment to a 13-week commitment. These usually required more than 36 hours of work per week. They could be anywhere between 48 or 60 hours of work per week. And during this time also, one thing to note about crisis nursing is that you had to have your profile ready. Your nursing profile had to be complete because the turnaround time from the time you picked the contract to the time you started the contract during a crisis nurse contract was much faster and still is much faster than when you sign a normal contract. So you would want to have your travel nurse profile as current as possible during that time so you could be submitted, approved, and start in a relatively quick pace. But the downside of crisis contracts, if you consider it a downside, is that they didn't really have the option of extensions. So it was very unlikely that you'd be able to extend a crisis nursing contract. Just because when they didn't need you anymore, then you were officially no longer needed. But that was the trade that we used to have under the old system. So let's dive into the current new system, or the current new market, as we're gonna call it. The amount of income that you can make as a travel nurse in today's market is absolutely insane. So remember the first part of the video where I shared with you the difference between a normal contract and a crisis contract? Well, you can forget all that because the current market has crisis rates for normal contract. And so the ins and outs of having to figure out whether you wanted to take a normal contract or a crisis contract are not nearly as relevant at the moment as they used to be. Unless somewhere has a massive strike and needs lots of employees very fast, that's about the only time you would have to really consider whether you wanted to do a crisis contract or not. In the current market, the amount a travel nurse will bring home for take-home pay once a week varies greatly, but the minimum amount of take-home pay that would be considered a really good contract nowadays is somewhere between $2,200 and $4,200 every week. And the places that are really struggling, that want you to work 60 hours or more per week, will offer you insane amounts of money to do that. Like somewhere upwards of $10,000 plus every week. And that's not necessarily take-home pay. It's usually gross pay, so you have to subtract taxes from that. So you'll probably be bringing home around $7,000 a week, which is still pretty insane, but you have that hourly requirement to get paid that much. But remember, to make those high dollar contracts, you have to sacrifice your time, energy, and stress level, which if you're willing to do that, then great. Now let's talk about how you can see exactly what contracts are out there in real time, right from the comfort of your own home. And keep in mind, this video is not sponsored by anyone, but I think these are the best routes to go with what is currently being offered. The easiest way to see contracts is to download an app called the Vivian app. It's a free download. The only thing they ask is for a little bit of your information. And of course, they're going to try to have their agents contact you anytime that you're interested in any sort of contract. But I like to skip on that part because I just like to use this this app to see what's out there. So if you're looking at a certain specialty and a certain area and you just are curious about what kind of contracts are out there, this app is going to be perfect for you. So let's take a look real quick and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I start by opening up the Vivian app, which is in the top right of my screen. And then you can see that you can go to browse jobs or choose your discipline. And that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna choose our discipline. We're gonna go down to RN and click that. And then you can choose your specialty from there. And for me, it's ICU. And you can even see just how many contracts they have posted, which are a ton, which is that number next to the specialty. And then we're gonna go down to travel contracts because we don't really care about permanent positions or per diem. And here we go. But if you wanna see the highest paying contract out there right now, so you just click pay and there you go. Just over $10,000 every week. But you wanna pay attention to how many hours they're requiring you to work, which is that little yellow box right there. And lots of the time, the high paying contracts, like I said earlier, will require you to work a ton of hours. But you can also click on it and get more information, scroll down, see all sorts of fancy things. So I know I just gave you this amazing resource in the Vivian app, but this should not be the only way that you look into contracts. I think you should also sign up with a travel nurse company and speak directly to an agent because lots of big travel companies have exclusive contracts with hospitals, and these contracts usually pay more and deliver a better environment than a typical contract because these positions are offered exclusively through certain companies, and none of these contracts would be visible on the Vivian app. As far as companies that I recommend to go through to check with an agent if you have no idea, I recommend starting with the company that I use, which is Travel Nurse Across America. And I'm going to leave my agent's info in the description below so that way you can call, text, email, whatever you prefer, and just mention Travel Nurse Rich, and he will be able to hook you up very well. Plus, he can look deeper into the contracts, and he can let you know if there are any exclusive contracts through them, which they have tons of exclusive contracts. But whichever way you choose, these are some amazing resources that you're going to want to check out for yourself, so that way you can see exactly what's out there. And now on to the next section. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the hot market travel nurses are benefiting from today is not going to last forever. And many people ask me, what is the climate of travel nursing going to look like in a post-crisis travel nursing market? Well, it makes sense that sometime in the future, when the market does eventually correct itself, travel nursing contracts will likely return to a similar form that they were before. So basically, the average contract that you would see in the pre-crisis, pre-COVID travel nursing era, you would see similar amounts in the future going forward when the market eventually corrects itself, which is also a good reason to start travel nursing as soon as you can to take advantage of how the market is right now. So one of the concerns that I've been hearing from many people is that they're concerned that the need for travel nurses will decrease so much after they become a travel nurse that they would be effectively committing career suicide because they ended up giving up all their seniority and all their benefits at their current job to pursue a career that was eventually going to correct itself. Well, let me just say that if that's your concern, you have nothing to worry about. There will be a good market for travel nurses for a very long time. And matter of fact, the need for travel nurses is going nowhere from now until the end of any of our lifetimes as we're watching this video. The reason I say this is because the need for nurses is projected to increase, if for only one reason, which is those good old baby boomers getting nice and old on everybody. Add that to the fact that nurses are leaving the bedside like crazy, and you got yourself a recipe for longevity of high-paying travel nurse contracts. But eventually, when the market does correct itself, if we're still working as travel nurses during that time, the worst case scenario is that maybe you might have to drive a little bit farther to get paid the high dollars that you want to get paid. And that's not that bad. And if you're watching this video and you realize that the pay and the benefits and the amazingness that's definitely not a word. If you notice the great things that travel nursing has to offer, but you don't even know where to start to become a travel nurse, or maybe you're really new to this whole idea of wanting to become a travel nurse, you're going to want to click this video. It is my everything guide on how to be a travel nurse. So go ahead and click the video. See you guys next time.